Now, before we can begin reading the Greek New Testament, we need to learn about some other signs and symbols. Now, these signs and symbols do not exist in the earliest Greek New Testament manuscripts. The earliest manuscripts were written entirely in uppercase letters without spaces and without punctuation or these symbols. But those symbols did exist in the Greek language, and later copies of the New Testament included them for greater clarity. And so our Greek New Testaments that we read now do include these signs and symbols, and we need to learn them. The first is what's called the breathing, or a breathing mark. The first, there are two of these. The first is a smooth breathing. Now, this looks much like an apostrophe in English. You see it there above the letter epsilon. So if we have an epsilon, it is like an apostrophe sitting above the epsilon. And this is not pronounced in Greek, so it makes no difference to the sound. But every word that begins with a vowel or a diphthong will have a breathing, either a smooth breathing or what we'll look at next, a rough breathing. The other thing before we move on to the rough breathing is that if the word begins with a diphthong, say like alpha and ipsilon, then the breathing goes over the second letter, not the first letter of the word. Remembering that a diphthong is really treated like its own letter. It's a letter combination. That's the smooth breathing. It's an apostrophe in that direction. The rough breathing goes in the same place but faces the other direction. So here we have the letter omicron and an apostrophe type thing, but facing in the other direction. Now, the rough breathing does make a difference to our pronunciation, and we include an H sound, an English H kind of sound. There is no H in the Greek alphabet. There is no letter H. And this is the way that Greeks would pronounce that sound. So here we have ha-thon, ha-thon, hu-tos, hu-tos. So they are the two breathing marks. The smooth breathing facing one direction, the rough breathing facing the other direction and creating an H sound. Next, we have a few punctuation marks. Some of these are very similar to our punctuation in English and should be very easy to pick up. First, we have the full stop or the period, which closes a sentence. And we see it there. It is exactly like our English full stop or period, sitting there on the line at the end of a word, the end of a sentence. Likewise, in Greek we also have the comma, which separates and connects ideas, and it is exactly the same as our English comma. Now in Greek, there is a semicolon, but it looks different from our English semicolon. It is used to introduce direct speech, it separates and connects ideas, and you see it is a dot above the line. Not sitting on the line, but sort of halfway in that space above the line, just kind of hanging there like that. And finally, Greek uses a question mark, which may be a little confusing, is just like our English semicolon. So our English semicolon looks like that, but in Greek, that is a question mark. There are also some other symbols we need to draw attention to. One is called the iota subscript or the iota subscript. And what this is it's literally a iota hanging below another vowel. You see it there. It's a tiny little iota. And let me draw one. So you've got an alpha and then a little iota. It sits below the line, sits below the letter. And this came about through the combination, the diphthong combination of an alpha and a iota. So originally in Greek, it would be written, that iota would be written on the line as a diphthong. But as Greek progressed, this second iota kind of got pushed below and is now a iota subscript. And here in this example, you see three of them. There's one below an alpha, there's one below an omega, there's one below an eta, and another one below an eta. However, even though this is technically from a diphthong combination, they no longer affect the sound. So you would simply pronounce this alpha as a normal alpha. You would pronounce this omega as a normal omega. You pronounce these etas as normal etas, even though they have iota subscripts. So you might ask, why are they there now? What difference do they make? Well, they do make differences for spelling, and we'll see more of that later on. Finally, Greek does use an apostrophe, not to be confused with the smooth and rough breathing that we just talked about a moment ago. The smooth breathing is here above an epsilon and here above the diphthong. But here is an actual apostrophe. In fact, you'll see rough breathing and then an apostrophe. An apostrophe will follow a word, and it indicates that a letter has been dropped out. So, ipa, which means by or under in Greek, if that is combined with another word, like aftu, the genitive form of him, then the omicron at the end of ipa will drop out, and to indicate that it drops out, an apostrophe is used. So you know there's a letter that is being dropped out. That's one of the uses of our English apostrophe as well. Or same here, you've got meta plus aftu. When you put those words next to each other, the alpha of meta drops out and an apostrophe is found in its place. So these apostrophes will indicate that a letter has dropped out, and you should be able to work out what the word is once you realize that a letter is missing. So these are the other signs and symbols that we need before we can be reading our Greek New Testament.